This video is brought to you by today's sponsor, Unveil. Unveil is a free-to-use platform for all artists, writers, and creators. If you've been searching for a place where you can share your creations among like-minded individuals, Unveil is the perfect place for you. Here you can easily post your OCs, traits about them, the world they live in, and so much more. There are many features Unveil offers to accurately portray your OC to your audience and friends. These features include adding a gallery for each individual character you have, adding specific traits for your character, even being able to add the world where your characters reside. All of these things appear to anyone who views your profile page. With each character profile you add to your account, you can more easily keep your creations organized. If there's one thing you know about me, it's the fact that I need things to be simple and easy to use, and Unveil is the perfect platform to keep track of your lovely creations. Your work deserves a place where you can easily share it among friends and like-minded individuals, and Unveil offers the perfect opportunity to do so. Some of my favorite features include the never NFT and anti-AI artwork policies they have in place. With this, your work won't get lost, but rather supported by the community Unveil has to offer. I really was impressed with how simple and easy to use Unveil is. Within minutes of creating my account, I was able to add profile specifics about myself and my artwork. I was even able to link other accounts to my profile like Patreon, a website, and so many more. I also really appreciate the tight-knit community Unveil has created for artists and creators. Check out Unveil for yourself and see how the site has been tailored to artists and creators specifically. Sharing, creating, and managing your artwork has never been so easy with the help of Unveil. Thank you so much to Unveil for sponsoring this video. If you would like to try it out for yourself, there is a handy link in the description down below. Unveil is free to use, so what are you waiting for? And if you'd like to follow me, I am on Unveil under the name Maddie Bites. And without further ado, let's get right into the video. What better way to start our day than by listening to the ramblings of a big baby? No, I'm not talking about myself, you silly gooses. I'm talking about the webtoon Baby Tyrant, a 43-chapter comic centered around the biggest, most baddest baby of them all, Mabel. Not really the most fear-striking of names, but I guess we can make do. We begin our story with our main character, Gael Yoon, being straight up murdered by her deadbeat father. As she's falling to her death, she reflects on how unfair and terrible her life has always been, and she wishes she had a better life. No, I'm not talking about that one. There, much better. Then a bright and magical glow overtakes her, and she wakes up reincarnated as a baby tyrant. Here she's called Mabel, so that's just what we're going to refer to her as from here on out. Like the title implies, she's not just a random baby though. She's the princess of the Ermanu of the Mike Ehrmantraut Empire. She has a loving father and brother, boundless wealth, and is also the center of a very important but vague prophecy where she will have to save the world. With everything she's gained, Mabel should want for nothing, but she basically finds every excuse in the book to be annoyed and very, very dissatisfied with her new life. But I don't need such fickle kindness, liable to disappear at the drop of a hat. Loving family? No thanks, I don't want it. Honestly, it's the way the Emperor fawns over me that I find the most uncomfortable. Can you both leave me alone already? If a god truly exists, let these people lose interest in me. Mabel, honey, sweetheart, you're a dang baby, for crying out loud. If these people didn't take care of you, you would die. We learn through flashbacks about Mabel's old life, which is the completely original story of mentally ill mother, abusive father. Her backstory is basically the same as my shitty Outsiders fan fiction from when I was 12, but with less burnt arms. In theory, setting up a character with a tragic backstory is a very good way to make them sympathetic and relatable. We all have hardships, and characters who also have hardships and eventually overcome them are interesting to watch. However, in the case of this webtoon, her backstory is immediately undone because she's reincarnated into the perfect life where she has no problem other than people pick her up or feed her or give her basic human attention. Sure, she still remembers all the terrible stuff that happened to her, but it's hard to feel like it actually matters when all of the stuff happened to a different body in a completely different dimension. And while it is nice to get a peek into Mabel's old life and also get to understand why she has such an aversion to family members and just human kindness in general, as the comic progresses, it just gets really tiresome. Chapter after chapter, Mabel finds new ways to complain about how terrible her old life was. I feel like I want to of Pavlov's dogs, but instead of a bell, it's a flashback about her shitty life. And instead of a dog and saliva, it's me banging my head on a frying pan to make it all stop. I've been struggling so hard to have a good life. I was too broke to afford anything expensive or tasty. At best, I could buy convenience store food for cheap since I worked at one. In my previous life, I had never received flowers from anyone. I had no one to come to my entrance or graduation ceremonies. No matter how long I lie here, no one will come to help me. How come my parents don't love me? Having been poor in my previous life, I can't stand fancy or luxurious things like this. A bruise from being hit in the face. Because Mabel is at the center of this prophecy, it leads the neighboring empire of Abelardo to continuously ask Mabel's dad Esteban if they can have her. Why is this kingdom so desperate to have a child in their possession? We don't know. From what I could gather, they assume Mabel is the chosen one. They gather this because when she was born, lightning struck the roof of the castle she was being born in. And the previously mentioned vague prophecy said that the magical chosen-y person would be born in the east or something. And you know, there's a few problems with this logic here. Was Mabel's mom the only pregnant woman in the entire empire or the entire east of Abelardo? There wasn't a time limit for the chosen one to be born in, so why are we also assuming Mabel, the first baby born after the prophecy had been told, is the chosen one? Why are all of these adults of a whole ass kingdom so dumb? Why are all of these adults of a whole ass kingdom just asking for someone else's child? I feel like that's a really dumb thing to ask. The stakes are so tediously low with this prophecy that I'm 43 chapters in, and we haven't even been introduced to what Mabel is supposed to be saving the world from. There's a prophecy where Mabel needs to save the world. Great, can we elaborate on this? So since this kingdom wants Mabel so badly, they end up writing letters basically every day to Esteban asking to have her. Esteban essentially ignores all of the spam mail until they show up at his doorstep one day and demand to meet Mabel. Here they magically assess if she's the chosen one, determine she is, and later try to kidnap her.
Oh, jump scare.
This leads Esteban to have her guarded at all times, as well as abdicating his throne to her at the age of 1. Because her being an empress will somehow keep the Abelardo kingdom from bringing her back to their kingdom? If anything, Mabel being an empress should make her more of a prize item than before. But what do I know? It's Webtoon logic we're talking about. Mabel really doesn't want to be an empress, so she makes up her mind to be a tyrant so that her kingdom will impeach her. What does she do that's so tyrannical and abysmal that will turn an entire kingdom against her? She sleeps through business meetings. She throws temper tantrums. Ah, the horror. Everyone knows babies aren't allowed to sleep and throw temper tantrums. This will surely get her impeached. It doesn't. Meanwhile, there's a new player introduced to us, and his name is Aiden, also referred to as the Demon of Devlin. Devlin is another neighboring kingdom that is hostile towards the Ermintrow Empire. Aiden is a 10-year-old assassin. That's right, cursed to kill anyone in his path. Why, you might ask? Would someone think it's a good idea to make a child assassin to do your bidding? I have absolutely no idea. I've basically stopped questioning this webtoon, so, you know, it's just whatever happens, happens. The child assassin is actually somehow more capable of wiping out entire armies single-handedly than any of the adults in the comic anyways. So I guess cursing a child to become an assassin is actually a good idea in this world. And what's worse is the only thing that makes his curse temporarily lift is being around Mabel. I feel like I've been reading the same story over and over again in the exact same art style with the exact same dumbass characters.
It's like
I thought my time was up.
No, it's like deja vu, like I've been here before.
But yeah, the only thing that can stop him from going on murderous preteen rampages is being around Mabel, which leads me to something that's been bothering me this entire read-through of this comic. Gael Yoon at the time of death was 20 years old. When she's reborn as Mabel, she's born into the body of a baby, yes, but the comic still makes it really clear that she retains all of the memories, maturities, and sensibilities of a 20-year-old woman. She is, for all intents and purposes, an adult woman just trapped in a baby's body, and as the comic goes on, it gets harder and harder to ignore some of the really weird age dynamics that play out in the comic. Any way you look at the situation, something just feels wrong. If we're just to take the ages at face value, Aiden is 10 and pining for a baby. If we look further into it, Mabel is 20 and Aiden is a 10-year-old. While nothing overt has been presented to us yet, the comic presents the relationship they're building pretty similarly to how other webtoons present early romantic relationships. And I'm really uncomfortable with what's been put on the table. Mabel and Aiden aren't even the only offenders of this either. There's a friend of Mabel's brother called Enrique, who is about 6 in the comic. His father has straight up petitioned for the pair to get married. Enrique has also given Mabel gifts of affection as well as attention. Mabel, being a sound 20-year-old, doesn't find any of this alarming, and in fact, she accepts and persists people give her gifts. And I wouldn't find it odd if it weren't for the fact that only young boys are shown to be giving her things. It got to the point where Esteban has banned boys from ages 5 to 15 from even entering the castle grounds because Mabel kept getting bombarded by young boys gifting her items. The whole situation reminds me of an anime where there's a really young girl or boy being portrayed, but don't worry guys, they're actually a 10 million billion year old vampire, so it's totally fine to be attracted to them. Sure, maybe I'm looking too far into it, but truthfully, I am uncomfortable with the situation. So Mabel goes about her days complaining about how terrible her life is, and we come to find out, since she is the chosen one, she gets to be protected by a guardian deity. The deity is here to guide Mabel through her new life and help her learn about her powers. Yep, she has magical powers that we don't find out about until episode 26. We learn she can talk to animals, cure curses, make it rain, and heal her dying father, all by the age of 2. What a gifted child! The most interesting thing that's happened so far is Mabel traveling to another kingdom to do a rainmaking ceremony and getting ambushed by the Devlin Empire. Here, we get a fake-out death scene for our best boy Esteban, and Mabel shows off said healing powers. And the whole thing lasts about 2 chapters before we're taken back to the Ermintrow Empire. I know it sounds like I'm just kind of saying random stuff that happens in this comic and ignoring any sort of overarching story structure or narrative flow, but that's just how the comic is. It really plays out as a jumbled early 2000s Disney sitcom. Events just kind of tend to happen, and there really is no overarching plot to be found in this comic, which is why it just tends to be event after event that rarely has any bearing on the story. At the very least, with I Thought My Time Was Up and I'm the Queen in This Life, there was some semblance of a plot or storyline or goal that is meant to be seen or achieved by the main characters. But since we rarely leave the set of the Ermintrow Castle and we're rarely introduced to new cast members, I can't help but be bored at the sitcom-esque events that happen. And now, there's nothing wrong with sitcoms. Anyone who knows me knows I love old, outdated sitcoms like I Love Lucy or The Patty Duke Show, and all sorts of episodic shows with no overarching plot. But in each of those shows, each episode does have a standalone plot, a problem to be solved, a relationship at risk, or some small adventure for the characters to go on so we can watch them overcome adversity in some way, even if it gets thrown out by the next episode. You know, like how a family adopts a dog and it's a huge deal for that episode, and then we never see the dog again by the next episode. It's not like they just sit there whining about their luxurious lifestyles and bitching that they wish people would leave them alone, like antisocial shut-ins. But this comic is just that. Just Mabel sitting and whining, and nothing happens. Nothing happens. It's basically just Esteban. Best boy Esteban is the only character I like in this comic, and it's because he's such a blatant nut job. I can't help but adore him. His over-the-top adoration for his daughter is honestly really refreshing from the normal webtoon "I hate my daughter" trope that's really common. Yeah, Yes, it's still technically here with Mabel's past father, but at the very least, we have best boy Esteban to counterbalance her past father. While he gives her grandiose items such as gardens, castles, and hell, entire kingdoms, his love isn't just limited to gift giving. It's sitting by her side when she's sick and taking the precautions he can to protect her. While it is a little bombastic and over the top, it's really hilarious and nice to see a parent actually care about his kid. Another thing I do like is having a baby protagonist, strangely. While I'm not the biggest fan of the execution, it is an interesting premise I would have liked to explore just a little bit differently. I like the fact that Mabel had to learn how to use her newborn body before she could learn to use her powers. It's an interesting idea, I just wish it wasn't laden with the adult-child relationship undertones.
Grow up! I'm 38 years old!
This is a weird little nitpick I have with the comic, but there is entirely too much onomatopoeia for each panel. While reading this comic for the first time on one of my streams, we started to notice that there was an action word for basically every single panel. There were even onomatopoeia words for things that didn't need explaining. Like, look at this for yourself. Turn, sniffle, sob, thump, huff, huff, crash, daze, speaking fluently, smile, heh, chirp, chirp, whoosh, sniff, sniff, touch, blink, shake, shake, buzz, chirp, chirp, peek, glare, whimper, step, step, rustle, pad, rub, careful, awkward, glance, sniff, sniff, stand, flinch, dash, dash, pant, dash, huff, 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 cough, irk, huff, huff, glance, smirk, jolt, close, zzz, pout, scurry, chirp, 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 crawl, peek, rustle, whoosh. That's just the onomatopoeia for one chapter, and half of the words aren't even action onomatopoeia words. Yes, I am aware that it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but it was very distracting and completely unnecessary for the context or understanding of what's happening. Mabel also doesn't seem like a real character to me either. I wish she was just a baby and not a 20-year-old, for the reason that she doesn't really even act like a 20-year-old. Her internal monologue reads more like a 12 to 14-year-old, and when she learns to talk, she still doesn't sound like she's 20 years old. She has an entire 20 years of past memories to think about while she's growing, and all she can do is think about how terrible her past parents were.
Boring, yawning, sloppy, lazy.
It comes across as pretty one-dimensional and doesn't do the story any favors in trying to convince us she's a real human being. I thought it was because she was a baby and couldn't do anything, but after finishing the comic, I think it's more because of the fact that she just doesn't have a personality. It leads me to want to learn more about characters like her brother who have more interesting traits than spend time with Mabel. Her brother is a very gifted child with an overbearing mother that seemingly dislikes him. See? Isn't that already more interesting than Mabel? There's also no plot in this comic. I didn't realize on my first reading until I got to the end and realized nothing had actually happened. There is so much setup for things that never pay off in the comic. The Abelardo guys just kind of stop trying to adopt her. I have no idea what the Devlin Empire is doing. They just seemingly act on whims. Mabel gains magical powers willy-nilly. No one grows or does anything to progress the storyline except for the Demon of Devlin, who moves into the castle so that Mabel can help him manage his curse. This is the main reason I equate this comic to a sitcom. Nothing overarching happens, and if there's a setup for some big payoff, I wouldn't hold your breath on actually obtaining that payoff. I don't think Mabel should have been a main character, and if she was, she shouldn't be a reincarnated 20-year-old, but rather just an over-gifted child. She is the center of this prophecy, after all. Mabel being reincarnated has absolutely no bearing on the story anyways. She doesn't use her adult knowledge or experiences to solve any of her problems. No one is going to do anything negative if they find out she's not actually a baby. I don't know, it was just really inconsequential to the non-existing plot. I really think her brother Oscar should have been the main focus of the story. He loves his sister, wants to protect her, and yet he has to watch somewhat helplessly as different kingdoms and people try to stake their claim on a literal child. And there's this prophecy that's constantly alluded to where Mabel has to save the world, but we have never been shown that anyone is actually in need of saving. Unless the time she needed to go and do a rain ceremony was her saving a portion of the people? I'm more or less left wondering what the point of the prophecy is, since no one seems to be in dire need of saving. I'm sure at some point the author will eventually get to explaining whatever the dire threat is, but again, I've read 43 chapters. If the author doesn't feel it's important enough to elaborate in that amount of time, then as a reader, I'm just going to assume that the prophecy is not that important. I'd also change the fact that so many people seem to be into a literal infant. It's odd and uncomfortable. I get she's actually a 20-year-old, but any way you look at the situation, it's bizarre age play. I would have taken out any hints of this in that comic. Yes, I understand that this sort of thing has happened in real life all the time, with countries, kingdoms, and cultures marrying off children to other people for a myriad of reasons. But here, it feels off. There's just entirely too many people interested romantically in Mabel. It's a really uncomfortable narrative to push, especially knowing the fact that Webtoon's age demographic is so young. I would be interested to hear what you guys have to say about this, because maybe I am just a little crazy. I don't know. You know that guy in your class or job that has a really good idea for a book or a graphic novel, and they proceed to tell you about the most bland or inappropriate concept, thinking it is the best thing ever created? They tell you about all the lore of their work of fiction and explain that the female heroine acts older for her age, so it's totally fine they're dating an older man. And all the while, you're politely nodding and smiling, thinking to yourself, this idea should never be made. And before we go, I want to add a quick segment where I rate the comics I talk about. The current lineup we have is Your Letter, followed up with I'm the Queen in This Life, and then we have I Thought My Time Was Up with Baby Tyrant at the end of the line. And a huge thank you to Unveil for sponsoring this video. I'm Maddie Bites, and I'll see you in the next one.